Yo, what's up guys? Chase the Bro here, and welcome to the first installment of my Dark Souls 3 PvP guide. I've been getting a lot of questions in live streams regarding builds, weapon setups, inventory management, rings that I use for builds, and really guides to PvP in general on my live streams. And I don't really have any of that on my channel at all, other than a few build making videos from 3 years ago and tutorials on solo weapon use. So I do have some showcases out there for guides for those of you that are searching for that, but I don't really have a series dedicated to it or an episode dedicated to each thing. So I wanted to start that off with weapon inventory management. I get this question a lot, why I have so many of each weapon, why they're placed the way they're placed. There's all different ways to sort your inventory, so I just basically want to cover the menuing in this game, as well as maybe even rings and inventory management in general, like consumables. This will probably be this episode, just using your menu to its fullest and trying to place your weapons in the proper spaces to be utilized in the situations that you need. So I'm going to start off by explaining the use of each of the weapons that I have in the inventory, followed by what surrounds them and why I decided to place them where I placed them. So with that being said, we'll start off with the Fire Dagger. The Fire Dagger is a pretty versatile tool. Its main function though for me is being a high critical damage weapon. You'll notice that it has a crit of 130 as well as an AR of almost 300, and that's just a fire infused dagger. That is the strongest critical dagger that you could have on a quality build. I know it's strange, you think a refined dagger might do better, but the elemental split actually works more in your favor when you're landing critical damage. So a fire dagger is the best you can do on a quality build and a strength build, and I believe even a dexterity build in terms of daggers from what I've tried. So the reason that I have that there is there's many different ways to parry in this game. And one of the ways that I use pretty often is I'll have a main hand weapon, right? And I'll have nothing in my left hand. So that way I can use the weapon art of the weapon without it being two-handed. Let's say I wanted to fight with this for some reason in one-handed. I can still get the weapon art. But it also allows me to take off my weapon and parry. So let's say I've traded with an opponent with my curved sword. Okay, we both use curved swords, we both got hit, we both got stunned from the hit. What I do right in that moment is I'll take off my weapon and then I'll do a bare hand parry. So it throws them off guard. They don't expect me to parry because I don't have a parrying tool. They wouldn't expect me to randomly lose my weapon and parry. And from there, when you go into your inventory, you automatically get the first weapon. And the strongest weapon that I can get in the default management of my weapons that I have is the Fire Dagger. So that's really the point in the Fire Dagger. Now the harp, next up on the daggers that I have beside there is the harp. You need a quick step tool in your inventory. There's many moments where you're going to be in certain scenarios where you need to avoid multiple opponents, whether that be being chased down by 3 dudes with spears and your rolls just aren't cutting it because they're able to roll catch. It's not too hard for a whole team to really time their attacks in a different sequence to hit your roll. Well, the iframes on the quick step allow you to have more invincibility frames. There, excuse my English. So you're able to dodge more efficiently. You can roll, swap it up, go to the quick step. It's very useful. Not to mention that if you're having a dagger fight and someone else is using quick step, it's very beneficial to counter them with daggers as well, depending on their setup. But I like to have a quick step tool in my inventory just specifically for that. Also, daggers are good finishing tools. So if I have, let's say, the straight sword, and they're really low health and they're easily dodging my straight sword, I can randomly just go to my dagger, right, and then attack and get quicker moves out of there. So it's a good mix-up. That's why I like to have it right at the, well, I mean, I automatically have it at the top because of the default assessment of the inventory. You can switch them up and I'll explain that soon, but I just wanted to cover default and why I have it the way I have it. Next up we have the Corvian Dagger, probably the best dagger in the game for mix-ups. The Murky Hand Scythe and the Height Harp are good because of the quick step, but this has a little bit more range, not to mention its weapon art is unparryable, and it really throws off timing, so you can mix up the R1s, stagger them, and then mix it up when they get away from you with range and use the weapon art. It also combos into the light attack. I mostly use it one-handed though, to be honest. I'll be holding my Greatsword or something, and then I'll swap to the Corvian and use the weapon art and throw people off, because it's an automatic change of a weapon, right? You'll see me change, it scares them, and then the weapon art has like a roll catch basically. If you try to dodge this on reaction, you usually end up getting hit by the weapon art because of its range and timing. So that's a really good mix-up. Moving on to the Lothric Knight Sword. It's probably one of the best straight swords in the game. It has a really good range. Not the best range. Actually, it's outdone by the Gothids Twin Swords range. But it does have more damage, and it has a critical modifier. So if you happen to land backstabs with it, which fishing with a straight sword is pretty easy, as well as parrying, because you'll oftentimes just have a parrying tool in your left hand when you're using a straight sword. So if I had a assist or something, it's really easy to land a parry. And if you're not somebody who's good at like menuing and swapping for hard swap parries, then a straight sword does really well for you. It's really good at punishing. Has good R2s. In fact, the two-handed R2 has a lot of damage frames, so if you're trying to roll catch somebody, this is a really good tool actually, and then it can combo it into a straight R1, as well as if you had just landed a backstab, if they're on the ground getting up, you can charge the R2, And a lot of the times you'll get them right out of the wake up when they try to roll away. So it's a really good roll catch tool. I also like to keep an ultra below me because I'm someone who parries, and I swap to a much harder hitting weapon for my ripostes. So if I'm fighting with a straight sword, I do it one-handed most of the time, and then I'm able to parry and go right down to my ultra for the riposte. And it's quite a lot of damage on the riposte with this or the Black Knight Great Axe. They're some of the highest in quality builds, so those tend to be my parry swap tools. Moving on to the Maureen Blade, I tend to have that lately just because sometimes I come across duels, like bonfire duels, and I like to have honor duels. I'm fun that way. And if I get into a really low health range, it doesn't happen too often, but I can swap to that, and I can swap to the red tier stone and blue tier stone rings, and then I'm in a really high damaging, high absorption point, even though my health is low, so I can bring it back if I've messed up and my health is extremely lower than my opponent. That's very useful for survivability. That's really all there is to it. I mean, it's still a straight sword, and I really kind of needed it as a straight sword place because I needed to have multiple straight swords here to push my greatsword under my Corvian. I like to have that, like I explained. I like to swap from my greatsword to my Corvian to confuse people. This is a really slow weapon, and it is very damaging, but sometimes you need a faster tool to finish them off, and that helps out. So moving on to the Ring Knight Straight Sword, one of the better quality straight sword weapons actually. It actually mainly scales off of quality, not too well off of faith and intelligence. It's got an E scaling. It's pretty bad, but this thing's weapon art is pretty insane. So if you start the weapon art and land them with our first R1, you get the second one. As well, it does get a straight sword moveset. So no matter what, you get the slashing R1s and the follow-up R2 to R2 combo if you land the first R2. So I prefer this moveset to the Lothric Knight Sword. It only gets the regular thrust twice. I like the R2 combos that this and the Gothids have. So I like that for that reason, I would say. Moving on to the Gothids, I needed another straight sword to move over in my inventory to keep the Gale's Greatsword right underneath the Great Knife. So I went with the Gothids. This is a really good duel setup where you'll have a shield, and you have the Gothids, which have the most range out of any straight sword. So if you're fighting another straight sword user, you do have that edge, even though the damage output on other weapons is strong, and sometimes stronger than the Gothids most of the time. Having the range is more important in a duel because you get chip damage in. Not even chip damage, you just get hits in, and they might not because you'll outrange them. So spacing is very important for that reason with these swords. The rolling L2, why am I heavy? Oh, I don't have my ring set up. It's really funny. But the rolling L1, very good at catching latency as well. Sometimes I'll be fighting latent opponents. The running L1 has 2 hitboxes that come out pretty spread. So it's very good at finishing off opponents who have just had their Tears of Denial broken or something along those lines with their health is low. The running L1 will do well, as well as the rolling L1 at very, very aggressive opponents. Sometimes you can catch them off guard by doing that in trading. These things do nuts damage. I meant crazy damage. But yeah, moving on. So Gale's Greatsword is probably the main thing I run when I'm starting a fight. I like Greatswords. They have good hyper armor. I can trade with lighter weapons. My spacing is really good with Greatswords because I've used them so much. Gale's Greatsword in general, though, why I chose it over the Claymore, is because it gets the R1, L2, R1 combo. And that outdamages the Claymore, especially refined. A refined Claymore isn't the best way to run it. In fact, it almost gets, like at 60 strength, it still gets it gets less damage than refined. But if you think about the point investment, 40, 38 compared to like 60 overall, it's a lot more point investment, and you get more damage out of the Claymore on a strength build, I would say, especially because of the 2-hand bonus because of that per point. So it's more stat effective. And this way I get to use Gale's Greatsword's combo and do more damage anyway. Now, I like to have the Corvian above it, which I already explained for the mix-up. I have a straight sword beside it as well. So if I'm fighting an opponent and they're being kind of passive, and I know I can roll catch them or combo them with a straight sword, I can just switch to it really quickly and bust out that combo out of nowhere. As well as I like having the Ultra Greatsword beside my Gale's Greatsword because it's my main fighting weapon. So sometimes I'm going to land parries while holding it, and I want the ability to transfer to a really hard-hitting riposte weapon. So I keep my Ultra beside and under my straight sword, which I tend to fight with a lot, as well as my Gale's Greatsword, and that kind of explains the management here. Now, the Ultra itself, though, I don't fight a lot with this Ultra. It does have an R1 to jumping attack, which is very damaging if an opponent is under, I would say, if they're at like 60% health, sometimes that can finish them off as a phantom. It's pretty good, depending on the build you're fighting, obviously absorption and stuff, but it's very good. It's got a really good R2 wake up as well. So if someone's trying to get up off the ground from a critical, if you time that right, it takes practice, don't get me wrong, it's not the easiest. Oops, see, I still fucked it up right there. But you're able to get them right off the wake up and it combos into the hit. Now, moving on to the Pontiff Knight Curved Sword, probably one of the strongest weapons on a quality build. It's definitely one of the top tier weapons in the game. It's always good to have a curved sword on the build because it's good at whiff punishing. It comes out very quickly. It's hard to reaction roll. This one in general also has the most range. So if you're using a quality build, you may as well keep the Pontiff Knight on you. Now, that being in mind, it is a weapon that I'm very good at punishing opponents with and trading. So sometimes, if they're also running a curved sword or a straight sword, I'll take the opportunity to hit stun trade them, where we both hit each other at the same time and I time it. And then I'm able to swap down to my Ultra or my Black Knight Great Axe and I parry. So I like to have a really hard hitting Ultra underneath basically all my weapons that I fight with on the regular, if you've noticed that. I mean, my playstyle is very critical, efficient. Like, I like backstabs and parries, and I try to go for them very often, so my menu kind of reflects that. It is very optimal, even if you're not going for parries, though. Sometimes you can switch these out for other hard-hitting weapons that have different movesets. But for me, the Black Knight Great Axes, they have the highest crit on my build. So, well, like, because of the AR. The critical isn't a good modifier, but the damage is insane. So I keep those under a lot of my fishing weapons, as well as my just battle weapons. So moving on to my rapiers. Both the rapiers are there for the same reason. They have different aspects to them, though. They have really good backstabs. Rapiers have a double grab window, so if you're fighting someone who's very laggy or latent, I definitely recommend using a rapier for backstabs, because most of the time, even if they roll away, it'll suck them back into the backstab because of that double grab window. And their latency basically won't protect them like it would any other weapon. That's really why I use rapiers. This one in general has a higher crit damage than the S-Stock, but less range. So if you're going for backstabs, I recommend using this. If you're going for just fighting overall with range and with punishes, I recommend the S-Stock. Either way, though, they both have that good critical. And right under them, I keep my Black Knight Great Axe. Because let's say you just landed a backstab and they're getting up. You can instantly transfer to... Oops, sorry. So if they're getting... You just got up in the backstab and they're lying there on the ground. Just change to your Black Knight Great Axe, two-handed and R2. That is a very good wake up. So I use it all the time in my streams. I don't know if you guys watch the streams or not, if you're just here for a tutorial. But if you've seen me use that, that's why I like to keep the Black Knight Great Axe right under my rapiers. Because I tend to get more backstabs with them. And that is right after I get out of the backstab when they're about to get up. I transfer to that two-hand R2. And a lot of the time, that'll wake up and catch them and finish them off. So that's why I like to keep those right under the rapier. The twin axes, I just have on every build because they're a very good whiff punishing tool. If someone swings their sword, you can turn around, space it, and punish with a really damaging L1 combo. As well as if they're latent or laggy, these things have 2 hitboxes again. So I like to do that against really latent opponents, and I try to roll catch them. The moveset's very boring, though, don't get me wrong. It's not very fun to play with, but it's very efficient. Now, moving on. Again, these Black Knight Great Axes are really here, just because to be under the Pontiff Knight and the Rapiers. I fight with them as well, but their placement doesn't matter at all because they're just there as wake-up tools and riposte tools. The Ring Knight Spear, I like to have at least 1 or 2 spears on my build. The Ring Knight Spear is a great chase down weapon. It works really well on a quality build, has really high AR for a spear. I think more than most other ones would be refined. And it gets that extra range of the flame. It's just a really long poking spear when buffed. And the flame does extra damage, so it's one of the better choices. Now, the whole reason for the Gundyr's weapon is for random weapon changes. So let's say I'm fighting with... It could be even the Black Knight Great Axe, alright? I'm fighting, and they're used to the spacing and dodging this. Well, out of nowhere, from neutral or running, wherever I want to be, I can randomly switch to this and do a weapon art. And this thing has great chase down capabilities, as well as wake up capabilities. So, let's say I'm fighting with the Pontiff Knight Curved Sword, and I just parried, right? I just landed my crit, so I traded, I swapped down, I parried, and then I did a crit or whatever. This is a great wake up, but Gundyr's is also a pretty guaranteed wake up, so I'll try to change to this and do the weapon art. It's really good, especially if there's a team around you, because it has basically perseverance. It's hard to knock somebody out of this. So even if they're swinging at me from behind, I'm able to chase down that weak opponent and finish him off. So I keep the Black Knight Great Axes underneath all of my Black Knight Great Axes for my swaps and my wake ups. So it's basically like a line. You want your main weapons that you're fighting with to have the ability to be swapped to either down, sideways, or up. So everything surrounding a weapon that you use a lot, you kind of want to be important. Just like I have my Black Knight Great Axe straight sword, my swap tool beside it being the Ultra, and then I have the Corvian above the Greatsword being my tool to finish them off with. It goes like that with most weapons. So the Pontiff Knight, very strong at most things, very bad at criticals. So if I'm going for backstabs, right, sometimes I'll just swap down to my axe, grab a backstab like that. Or same thing with the riposte. And then the Gundyr's is there to finish them off afterwards. So I basically sort my inventory in a line of my important weapons. My Rapiers go down to Gundyr's, my crits down to Gundyr's, and then my top being just the finishers, kind of, like the Corvian. This is a great escape tool, like I said. That covers most of the weapons. The fists are this there for regen, for health, stamina, Obviously, I have a physical one, so I can use Perseverance and chase down people. The placement on those isn't very important. I always have one equipped anyway. And then the bottom row of my build is usually utility. So I'll have an 100% block shield, a counter to lightning arrow, which is my lightning shield. It's really a counter to lightning builds in general. And then I have a talisman to use my miracle, which is usually Tears of Denial. And then I need a crossbow as well, because sometimes you're fighting an opponent who's just chilling in a really small space. Oops, I don't have my bolts equipped. But yeah, they'll be chilling in like a small space, and I just want to pick damage them. So if they're just like in a room, in a group, I'll just do that to annoy them. Or sometimes you're fighting someone who's also using a crossbow and staying ranged. You can aggress them, or you can also just take the time to practice crossbow shots and punish. It's very useful to have one of those on every build. Same with the Millwood. Sometimes there's just a team lurking and chilling. You can use the Obscuring Ring to hide, and then, you know, just fire from afar. Again, I don't have my arrows, goddammit. And you're able to just, you know, slowly chip damage them, pick them off if it's one of those long invasions that we all love so much. What else did I miss? I think that's most of this inventory. Obviously, each of my builds is different. This is one way you could do inventory. I'm going to show you another one in a second. This is my all efficiency type inventory. It works for most of you guys, since all of you guys aren't always fishing for crits. This one works overall really well because you're going to still land some every once in a while. Great wake up tools and parry riposte tools are important, as well as having a variety of weapons just in general for different scenarios. So this build is pretty complete, this window, but I also use a window like this sometimes. I'll do, by the way, you can organize everything by whatever you want. Weight, okay, attack power, guard absorption by effect. And then also, not a lot of people know this, but you can inverse the orders. So if I want default reverse, I use square. So now everything that I just showed you guys is basically reversed. So if you're someone who finds themselves easier to swap upwards, this one might be better for you, because you'll be fighting with, let's say, a curve sword, and then you swap up to parry instead of down. So I mean, there's tons of different ways you can organize it. Default is just the best for the one that I showed you. The only other one that I use pretty often that you'll see me use is reverse weight or reverse attack power. So this one is purely made for landing parries and ripostes, because I don't really care about the order of my weapons when I do this. This build, this one window isn't organized for it. Let's say I do have other builds that literally are a row of Black Knight Great Axes, my main weapons here, and then shields. And basically what I do with that is I can parry and land my ultra from anywhere. So if I land a parry right, I can just hit L2 to skip up to my top weapon. And when I have those kind of things, I'm just running it because I like fishing, getting backstabs, parries, and just kind of styling. This inventory isn't the most adept at scenarios, I would say. The other one, the default order, is the best for all situations. This one is just if you're someone who's trying to parry a lot and get cool crits, and maybe like armor swap and stuff, because then you're able to always get to your strongest weapon no matter where you are. But that one's just more for style, so that's why I showcased the default view for you guys. Now, moving on to armor. Doesn't really matter. I mean, it's up to you guys what you wear. I like to have 2 different armor sets for fashion. You can also use the Armor of Thorns for application of breaking people's Tears of Denial once they're broken, to finish them off. I might start doing that. It's a really good effect because the armor causes a little bit of damage per roll, and I'm wearing the whole set. It's very useful. So I kind of recommend that. I don't really have it on me. But moving on to the rings. You want your ring inventory organized as well. So it depends on what you like running. This is my favorite currently for ring setups. The life ring gives you the extra, what is the percentage? Does it even tell you? It just raises your maximum HP, but I forget by how much. But it's very useful for starting battles. If you're not going to be using your heavy weapons, you can take off the Havel's ring, go to life ring. You kind of always want a life ring. Some princess as well. You want that for regen when you're in, non-battle scenarios, whether it's traveling to find the host or if he's running from you, or if you're trying to just regain HP and the team is just kind of huddled in a corner together playing passively. That combined with a regen weapon like the Simple Cestus will slowly regen your HP. You always want something like that. Something you'll find me doing pretty often as well is I keep the Hornet Ring on as my main aspect to fighting. I like criticals, obviously. But every time I heal, before I heal, you'll notice I do this. And I swap on and off the Estus Ring, because that again increases the restore rate of your Estus. Forget by the exact amount as well. There's percentages to all these, I forget, but it's pretty noticeable for the Estus Ring. So I kind of like to keep that right above my critical ring since I use it the most. I recommend keeping it maybe above if you're not someone who uses the Hornet Ring and you use like the Leo Ring or something that I don't use. Try to keep that above it for easy swaps to heal anytime you want to for extra HP. The Havel's, Prisoners, and Ring of Favor are kind of like a staple for most people. You're going to want those rings. Some people run Chloranthy Ring for stamina regen. I don't really, because I'm very good at stamina management, as well as at meta soul level. I find the stamina that I have to be pretty nuts, because I'm used to soul level 90 to like 125, but at 90 my stamina is lower. So I don't really run the Chloranthy Ring. You could, and maybe take out the Priestess Ring if you don't use Tears of Denial the way I do. What I like to do is I have 10 faith on my build, and then I'll pop on the Priestess Ring, and that allows me to use the Priest Chime to cast Tears of Denial. I don't have FP, but... So basically I get this free miracle without actually having the correct stats for it, and then I take it off and put it back on the Hornet Ring. Just saves me 5 soul levels for that one thing that I can get for the ring, basically. Let's go. Moving over, I like to have the Tearstone rings. Like I said, sometimes I have bonfire duels with viewers who are just wanting an honor duel, and I'll keep those for when my health is low. It doesn't happen too often, but it is very useful to have these 2 rings, as well as the Lloyd Shield Ring. If you're having a duel more than an invasion, you're going to want the Lloyd Shield Ring over the Hornet Ring. You're not going to land a parry right off the bat, unless you're kind of lucky and your opponent is very spammy. But having this defense absorption, which is pretty huge, by the way. I jump from 30 absorption to 44 and take my first hit. It saves me a lot of health. So one of the good duel setups, I would say, is to have Life Ring, as well as the Lloyd Shield. You take the first hit or 2, right? And then maybe you're missing health like I am now. Probably a little bit more from 2 hits. But the Lloyd Shield Ring does a lot. Just pop off the Life Ring, maybe to go to some Princess. And then you're back to having the Lloyd Shield Ring absorption. So 2 times I get to use the Lloyd Shield Ring out of that one scenario, because I had Life Ring at first, right? Where my health was full. I took the hit. And when I took off Life Ring and put on Sun Princess to regen or something, I'm back to full health because the cut from Life Ring is gone. So it's very useful for managing damage output to yourself. I like to also obviously keep the Hornet Ring on. I like criticals. And because it's my main ring that I fight with in invasions, I like to have this right above it for the heals and right below it my cat ring. So any ring you guys use at all periods of time, you're going to want to try to have a line like I have right here at least, where you have the heal ring above your main ring and the cat ring for falls right below your Hornet Ring. Now this is more advanced play than beginner, because you guys probably can't swap your ring mid-fall like most people can that have been playing this for a long period of time. But it is very good to practice, and even still, even if you don't swap it like mid-air, you can still try to swap it while running, right? So, and then jump off the cliff. It's just easier to know where your cat ring is for that one reason, and not to wear it at all times. It's just a waste of a ring slot when you can practice mastering that. And then as for the final few rings, I like the blood ring. I don't use it too much, but when I fight someone who's super laggy, and I'm talking like crazy lag, I'll put it on because it increases my iframes and it makes it less likely for me to get a hit from people that are just spamming with a very high latency and lag and getting free hits on me. It increases my iframes. I take more damage, but believe me, with the latency, that saves you a lot. And then these two are kind of like a little combo. If I want to hide and do sneaky things, or just hide and regen my health in general, I'll use the Obscuring Ring. But the thing is, I'm invisible minus my Tears of Denial. They're visible, so they just see this floating around from afar. So you need to also equip the Slumbering Dragon Crest Ring. Then I'm completely invisible and I make no sound, so it's very hard to find me. A lot of people do this just to hide, but I do that just to get my HP back and kind of sneak up on my opponents sometimes. I don't use it too much, but it is useful for certain scenarios. So this ring inventory works really well for me. I'm not really missing anything. I may or may not sometimes pop off the blood ring and put in the Night Slayer's ring, which ends up going right here so that I can guard break people. The Night Slayer's ring increases the stamina damage done to people. So I do that sometimes depending on where I'm invading and what time I'm invading at, believe it or not. If you invade really late at night Eastern, you get a lot more latency, so this helps me. If I invade more in the midday, I might keep this Night Slayer's ring. But yeah, it's basically my ring management. Or if you want, you can take this off and put a cat ring here. If you find yourself using the Lloyd Shield Ring, you want the cat ring beside it. I don't use this too much in non-dual scenarios, so I don't do it too often. But even still, it's still just 2 slots over to my cat ring, so it's not too bad. I think that covers the rings, though. I don't think I missed anything. Oh yeah, consumables, yeah. So a lot of you guys can do whatever you want. Consumables aren't very, very important. A lot of people don't even use their hotbar. I kind of recommend it, though. You're going to want a finishing tool on there, whether it be throwing knives or the Church Guardian Shiv. I find the Church Guardian Shiv more useful. It tracks your opponent. So like I have Tears on right now, when it's broken, if you, oh god damn it, I don't have FP. If you wanted to just finish them off, just kind of maybe stay close to your opponent is my recommendation. Throw out an attack, they'll roll it, and then throw this after. They won't be expecting you to be able to do that, and then you'll be finishing them off right there. Alternatively, if you're running other builds that aren't quality, a lot of quality weapons actually cannot be buffed. Only my Rapiers, a few of my straight swords, and 2 of my daggers can actually be buffed. So I don't really keep lightning bundles and stuff on me. You can though, obviously, in that place, and then maybe put the Church Guardian Shiv there. The order doesn't matter too much, but I like to have at least maybe like a bundle, a finishing tool, which is what I use the shivs for, a throwable, and then the Undead Hunter Charm works as well. I recommend keeping throwing knives on as well, because if someone's climbing a ladder, you just spam these, they fall off. Very useful for people trying to escape you via ladders. And then the Church Guardian Shiv is like the finishing tool. So and then it's really up to you for the rest. There's still more slots. I don't like to have too many because I like to know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then back to my Estus. You can also hot scroll to your Estus by holding down, in case you didn't know that. I know this game doesn't explain a lot, but I like staying on my bundles or my Church Guardian Shivs for finishers, and then I'll swap back to my Estus. And yeah, that pretty much covers my first tutorial. Comment other things you guys would like to see, man. I want to know. I want to teach you guys what you want to know. And I started with this because I get questions all about this all the time, and I thought I'd make a guide. I don't know if you would like one for each build, but basically the premise is the same. You just want to make sure, basically, in the diagram around, I mean like T or cross around your weapon is useful for most of your important weapons, as well as right below that for maybe finishers. So, like I said, main weapon, crit afterwards, wake up. Main weapon, wake up. These are both wake ups. Also good crit damage, like Gale's Greatsword. Random surprise attack, same thing. You just want to make sure you have something like that in there, and a few counters to certain things, like I've explained in the video. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the guide. I'll try another thing, maybe build making. A lot of you guys might not understand stat allocation. I'm here for you guys. I'll try to upload a guide like this once a week, and you let me know which one you'd like to see next, and I'll try to get to them to add to the series that I have on the channel. And yeah, here's the build and stats for you guys if you guys want to look at it one more time before we head out. And I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Anyways, have a good night, boys.